All right, we're going to get started on the quiz, so everyone take 5 minutes and just be quiet for a second. All right, we're going to take a few more minutes on the quiz.
Test.
Does anyone need another minute on the quiz, or are we good to go? Everyone good? Okay. All right. If you've signed up to pitch, can you please line up on the left over here, please? And then we'll get it going. All right, guys, we have 7 people. Is anyone else? Please line up on the left here. Ivy, awesome. Just line up like right. Yeah. Let's get started.
That's okay, I get it. Just whenever I'm ready. Is that okay? Amber, whenever I'm ready. Okay, got it.
Awesome. Thanks for going first.
Of course. All right, guys, so I know all of y'all are UT students, so I want y'all to imagine you're in a classroom. And the professor goes to write on the board, but you can't really see what they're writing. So you go to pull out your phone to take a photo, and then you fall a little bit behind. Then it happens again, and again, and again. And then what's the point of going to class? What's the point of engaging in an environment that is working against you? This is what low vision students face every time they...
Something that people are doing already, this fit check phenomenon, but I haven't really seen a website specifically built for this. Now, in all honesty, fit check does not exist yet. I do have the team to build it, but I don't have any expertise in fashion or like style, or like what girls shopping is like. So please, if you have any experience, if you like clothes, I would love to talk with you. Thank you.
All yours.
Yeah. Great pitch. So 2 things that I would say to make it more clear are, sorry about that. One is just a clear view of what the product is. So scanning a QR code, finding clothing, got all that. And then I know you were kind of looking for people to partner with at the end. As part of a pitch, I learned this a long time ago, never say, or never caveat your experience level and kind of undersell yourself, because it sounds like you do have a lot of experience. You actually sounded like the expert for a minute and a half, and then at the end, the last thing people remember are, I'm actually not the expert. So you want to position yourself to be the expert.
Yeah, totally agree. As many of you, the students know, I really focus on the story a lot, just because I find that's one of the first things people need to work on, and that really makes a big difference. And you nailed the story, like really, really good. It was just super, it was just kind of telling a story the whole time. It could always get better, but it was like super easy to pay attention and listen to, and like credible, and you were just telling the story of how it worked. And I think the way you work in at the end, like, okay, that doesn't exist, but I'm going to go build it. I think that comes across fine. It does not, it's not misleading or something. It was perfect. So I thought that was really, really good.
Thank you very much, guys.
I want to ask you guys all a question. How many of you guys have ever felt overworked by your workload before? Just raise your hands. A lot of y'all. And I want to take that energy and throw you guys in the shoes of Jonah. Jonah is an associate at the Peakstone Group, a mergers and acquisition firm based in Chicago. It's late at night, there's a looming deadline, and you're drowning in a sea of documents. There's thousands of data points, all with unstructured, with inconsistent formatting, and really there's just so much things going on. And Jonah is tasked with this one task, is to just answer a question, and he needs to find this one crucial piece of information. But it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. And in the world of 3,000 plus M&A firms across the United States, Jonah is not alone. Whenever analysts need to find an answer, they have to go through hundreds or thousands of pages of unstructured documents. And that's an issue. So we talked to 10 plus investment banking professionals, and they all said the same thing. Virtual data rooms suck right now. And to give you more context, analysts use a tool called virtual data rooms to access company financials and documents. And so that's where we come in. Hello everyone, I'm Will, and I am the co-founder of Finopsis. And we're the tool that Jonah wishes that he had. We're revolutionizing financial diligence with AI-driven data aggregation as well as enhanced data rooms. Now imagine if Jonah could just ask, give me the top 30 relevant agreements related to revenue this past quarter, and those documents will just show up. That's our semantic search. And what if Jonah wanted to, instead of reading a 30-page contract, he could just read a short and concise summary about what happened. That's our AI smart summarization as well as tagging. And whenever anything changed in the data room, he'll be notified of what happened, keeping him ahead of the game. And all of this is done while maintaining security because we know what's at stake. And I'm running out of time, so just to give you a little more context of where we are right now, we already have a working prototype that uses logical reasoning, and we're also bootstrapped with thousands of dollars in cloud credits, and we're working with the former YC alumni to take our product off the ground. And before I leave, I want to ask you guys this one question. If you guys were Jonah, would you want to use Finopsis? Thank you.
Awesome job. I love how you opened with a question, by the way. And then I spent 5 years in private equity, so data room and data room analysis resonates very, very closely with me. I'd say the one thing, great idea. I love the concept. The one thing that I would do to make your pitch stronger is say, who else is doing this and why that's not working? Like, data rooms don't operate like this, and here's why they're not building out this technology. Quick quick caveat, as you're telling the story, I thought the story was great. I think the vision's great. The use case is very, very clear to me. So I was just focused on that. And then I love the fact that you said, hey, we went and talked to investment bankers. Like, we talked to people in the market. That's how you get real market insights and you understand kind of what's happening in the space.
Yeah. Great job. I know you've practiced this a number of times, and it's gotten a lot better. That was a big improvement. 3 specific things that I think would be making it better. When you talked about the people you talked to, you said 10 plus. I would say like 13. It's just like being exact is more credible. Second thing is in your story, we talked this a little bit last time, but I think this is a good one to pull into it for telling the security part. Is right in the middle after you talk about it is spending time in the data room himself, saying, so then he had this idea of going and putting it into, just pushing it all into ChatGPT. But suddenly he realized that his servers are all blocked from accessing ChatGPT because he's not allowed to from his company. And that's why he looked at Phenopsys, because it let him use something like that, but worked with his IT department. And then last thing, just as you just see, next steps of, there's always next things to work on the pitch. That was really good. You clearly practiced it a lot. The story is way better. The next thing is figuring out how to get so comfortable with it that you can relax a little bit more. That will make it even better too.
Thank you.
All right, good job. Line's getting longer. Good. Oh, we got a trio.
We're all here together.
All right.
Howdy, my name is Santiago, and we are Lightyear Technologies. We believe that the gym is outdated, and we want to start the revolution by focusing on strength equipment and actually building in technology that is smart and building out intelligent gym equipment that will be able to help users have better workouts, track their progress better, and use tried and true methods that the science community is building out right now in the gym space to be able to do research studies based on muscle growth or whatever goal that the end user might actually want. We want to be able to tailor that experience to each individual person. And we want to start that by here in Austin, Texas, bringing it to Collective Labs. We're working on that right now, and we're excited to talk to you guys about our technology.
As he said, we envision an ecosystem under Lightyear. An ecosystem to where if you're in California working out at Lifetime, or if you're in the Austin Lifetime, you have a 4-digit PIN on the machine, and you have a facial ID to where it remembers your sets, your reps. We have an AI software that recommends sets if you're bulking, if you're cutting. We envision an ecosystem to where we're compatible with Oura Ring and Fitbit, to where now your workouts are based on last night's sleep and how many steps you've taken that day.
And then one question you guys might have is how is technology going to be incorporated in the gyms, and why hasn't it been done already? We've learned that the number one reason why it's not incorporated today is because of cost. Machines such as this usually cost around $40,000 to $50,000. We've managed to reduce our costs down to $5,000 to $7,000, which would increase our adoption rate among gyms. And then a number of other improvements we don't have time to go over it. But as far as our progress so far, we've raised over $300,000 in funding, and we have 2 working prototypes ready to go.
Thank you, guys.
No, that was great. I love how you guys work together. Very clear story about the equipment. I like the point at the end about how you're changing the economics of the market. That's big. That's why you guys can go and win in the space. I'd say the picture to me, if there's one thing that I would have a clearer image of, it would be the product. Are you making bench presses? Is that a bicep machine?
That's our first prototype. We're going to make each machine. So bicep curl we have done, chest press, leg press, shoulder.
So that's exactly what I would just hit on those 3 or 4 things, because then people start to put an image in their head of, okay, I see it now. I see a gym. I know what Lifetime Fitness or 24-hour fitness look like, and then this is going to replace all of that equipment in that gym, and then you can actually imagine something really big too. It's okay, now this is outfitting every gym in America. So cool, great job.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. We have a couple of different investments in human performance and kind of this gym experience in gyms where there's cameras all over you watching what you do and measuring you different ways and things like that. So I definitely think there's a lot going on here. You guys obviously practiced your pitch, which is a really important first step, and just doing a good job, so that was great. You've heard me talk about stories a bunch, and I don't think you pitched here before, so maybe you haven't heard me talk about this, but I apologize to everyone else that's heard me say it 10,000 times. But if I were going to give you a pitch, and it's just a riff on it, doesn't mean mine's actually any better than yours, but just to give you another example to hear, I would probably say something like, the other day I went, and I'm actually, this might sound really stupid because I don't actually go to the gym, so I'm just going to make up some things, but like, the other day I went to the gym, and man, I got in, and first thing I did is I like to do cardio first, and so I hopped on the Peloton. And one of the things I love about the Peloton, as soon as I logged in, I just like tapped my phone, and it like logged me in, and suddenly it like remembered all the other things I had done and all my other trips, and it knew like it was connected to my Oura Ring and all these other things, and I did my workout, and it was great, right? It didn't really matter which one I used or what gym. Then I was like in a hotel traveling, and there was another Peloton. I jumped on the thing, I did the same thing. It was awesome, right? But then I went over to the bench press machine, and it was just like, it's actually just a set of weights sitting there. And so now, like, I gotta go, like, pull out this other app and, like, track what I'm doing and, like, do this other stuff. But when I'm traveling, I kind of forget to do that. And I didn't have time. And so, suddenly I realized that all my Peloton workouts were, like, way better tracked and way better connected than all my other ones. But then I went to this gym at blah, 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 blah place. And when I walked up to their bench press machine, it had a QR code, and I logged in, and it downloaded this app, and suddenly it was just like using the Peloton. When I got on, it remembered me, and it knew how many presses I did, and it connected to my Oura Ring, and so it told me I needed to do extra reps today. And then when I came back the next day, it remembered me, and it didn't matter which one I used. And kind of like telling that story of using it, it gets across a lot of these benefits. And the fact that it might do different machines and even things like that, without actually ever saying, here's what it does this, it does this, it does that. And so anyway, that's just like a...
Something, it's just that there's not really, like there's like a tonal that's an all-in-one at home. Like there's nothing in the commercial gym space we can kind of relate it to.
A Peloton.
That's a bike, right?
Yeah, that's you're but you're just relating it to something else. Like like to me, like I think it. I mean, again, I may not understand it, but like I think it totally relates to the Peloton. It's like what they do for cycling, you're doing for all these other machines. Right. And like you can say like, why has this been so popular? Why does it now? And you might also do they also have the workout companion part, but but one big part of it I think is that too. So anyway, good job. Hope to see you back. Thanks. All right, you guys can hand it off. Next week's the $1,000 pitch off. All right.
Hello. Hey guys, my name is Ivy. I am a junior with a computational biology major, so hectic times. So during this busy time of the year, I'm also trying to take care of my health. So eating good, eating healthy home-cooked meal. So I got together with my friend and we tried to cook this chicken tikka masala dish. So we put out the recipe and we figured we're missing 8 out of the 10 spices that's needed for the dish. And we weren't just gonna go buy a whole new shelf of spices just for a few uses. And just thinking about having to work with 10 different spices is already stressing me out. And as I talked to more people, I realized I was not alone. From studies, over 70% of Americans actually regularly cook at home, but a significant portion of them reported that they experience barriers in flavor limitation and time constraint. So I was thinking, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way for people to be able to cook what they want at home. So this is the solutions I came up with. Spiceable spice carts. This is inspired by medicine blister packaging. So all different spices are selected and sealed in the blister bubbles that are ready to be popped out into your pot. And I built a little MVP as well with the cold seal medicine blister packs. So I provided this again with my friend and we tried to cook the dish again. And all we had to do is just to follow the instructions on the back and pop everything into the pot. And we created the same dish with flavor just as good, taking less amount of time, and it was such a meaningful cooking experience, learning about the cuisine and cooking with my friend. So Spiceable Spice Carts. It provides you with convenience, affordability, and cultural authenticity. For convenience, with the convenient compact spice carts with instructions on the back, it takes the guesswork out of cooking, making sure every single dish you make is with the best flavor while taking the least amount of time. Affordability. Rather than spending $20 every time you want a dish, you can buy a few of these cards, and it easily provides you 5 to 6 meals. And cultural authenticity. Inspired by global cuisine, there are different spice blends that are curated by chefs and students and people from different ethnic backgrounds. So it makes sure you have access to authentic global flavors with the least amount of hassle. Once again, my name is Ivy. I'm looking for people with talents in financing and manufacturing, so please reach out to me if you're interested. Help me make home cooking easier, tastier, and healthier, one spice card at a time. Thank you.
Great job. And I can totally relate because I have like 3 drawers in my kitchen that are just stocked up with spices and I have no idea what they are. So I think there's definitely a use case there. I thought it was a great pitch. You went through all the benefits of it. You went through the storytelling. It was very, very engaging. If I had to say add one thing to it, and I don't know a lot about this market, but I heard the supermarket industry in a whole is pretty tough. So if there's do you have a go-to-market channel? Are you going to go direct to consumer? Just kind of add that in there. Like, what's your plan to actually get this into people's hands and have them try it out, learn about you, and learn about your products? But otherwise, I thought it was great.
Awesome. Great feedback. Yeah, great job. Obviously, I know we've seen this pitch before, and it keeps getting better and better. Small thing is just at the end, like you got into the explaining, and it can do this, and it can do this, and just I start tuning out. It's just like that. You can make that part of the story too. And like the next week we tried this, and like get across the fact that there's different kinds, there's different ways, or things like that, without making a list of features. Cool. Great job.
Thank you.
Is that everybody? All right. Well, Dino's going to think about the winner for a minute while we move up to our chairs. That was great. You guys are really just keep getting better and better. I'm very impressed. And as we'll get updates on towards well, it's up right now. So next week we moved it up a week. Next week is the $1,000 pitch off, and so I'd love to see where the expectation is like 50 people pitching. Like that would be ideal. It's not just so it's certainly more than the 7 or 10 we normally get. Would love to see everybody who's pitched is welcome to pitch. In particular, people that are really working on things that could be in the lab. There are also things we'd love to see. And again, if there's anything you could do to really help me and help the class, it'd be to help get that word out to anybody else on campus that's working on a startup that might, that whether they think they should be in the lab or not. I want to meet them. I want a chance to try to convince them and see if it's good to be here, because we want all the best student startups to be part of the lab next semester. And so yeah, that's my goal, is to have awesome people pitching. And to hopefully make that even better, even beyond having free pizza, $1,000 in cash, and me to give you feedback. We've got Jason Calacanis coming next week. I don't know if any of you know Jason, but Jason is one of the few people that totally gives me my run for the money on being one of the most active angel investors in the world. He is definitely one of the most active angel investors in the world. His podcast, which they just moved into Capital Factory on the 5th floor, and they're recording here now, is called This Week in Startups. And it's all about startups, obviously, and is one of the top podcasts, certainly about startups, and has been going for a long, long time. He also is on the All In podcast, which is one of the top podcasts. So anybody listen to All In podcast? Some of you, yeah.
Big fan.
Big fan. And tonight they're doing a special election episode, I know. So really excited to have him come. I'm putting up the $1,000, but he does not like to be outshone. So who knows? There could, I'm not making any promises, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other cash ends up getting thrown around. Also, he is a really active investor. That's one more person that could go fund one of your companies. So please help me get the word out. Please, let's get lots of people here pitching next week. I think we're going to do it downstairs on the 1st floor, and to make it even bigger. And it's open to everybody at UT, and it'll be our last big class. So that's next week. And this week, we have Dino, and I've told you a little bit about him already, but so glad you could make it. I've been having a lot of fun getting to know him over the past couple years, and he is the CEO and co-founder of Saronic. He's a former Navy SEAL, so thank you for your service. He is Capital Factory just recently got the chance to invest when they raised a big round of funding led by, was that one also led by Andreessen Horowitz?
Our Series B was led by Andreessen, yes.
Led by Andreessen Horowitz with lots of other great investors too. And so, yeah, super excited to be working with them. And as we get to work with, it's a big part of what we do here on this floor, right? Is we have all these government people coming through. This is one of the companies that they get really, really excited about, particularly the Navy, but many others too. So really excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
When we invited him, I don't think any of us were thinking that today was Election Day. So thank you all for still being here. I hope you all voted, and if you don't, we will get out of here in time for you to go vote. So I bet class ends at 6 and the voting ends at 7, so you could run somewhere and vote, and I hope you do if you haven't. But yeah, today, I really appreciate you in particular spending your time with us here today. So we're going to start off as usual, and we'll talk a little bit. This is getting recorded for our podcast, the Austinpreneur, but it's really about giving the students a chance to get to know you and ask questions themselves. So since I know you a little bit already, I'll kind of kick it off, and then we'll open it up to them, and we are going to be out of here right on time at 6 o'clock.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So tell me, first of all, did you always know you were going to be in the military, and did you always know you were going to be an entrepreneur? Which of those came first?
I didn't have a clue about either one of those.
Either one of them.
No.
So how did you end up being a Navy SEAL?
So I grew up in New Jersey. My dad immigrated from Greece before I was born. I mean, he was like 8 years old. This is the 50s. Of course, Greek family in New Jersey, they opened a restaurant, right? So I grew up in the restaurant industry. I went to school
and also with role models around you who were entrepreneurs.
Yeah. My grandfather came over, literally did not speak English, worked at the United Nations, was a busboy, left my grandmother and her 5 kids at the time, they ended up with 6, left them in Greece for 3 or 4 years, and then ultimately saved up enough money, brought them over, opened a diner, opened 2 diners, opened a restaurant, built a really good life for his family. It was very, very impressive. My grandfather is one of my ultimate heroes. I always look up to him. So I was going to school for computer engineering. One of my goals was to not work in the restaurant industry. So I thought I was going to go into network and cybersecurity, and this was 99, 2000. Wouldn't have been a bad time to go into cybersecurity, but 9/11 was my junior year of college. And that's what kind of changed my thought process. As I saw the war in Afghanistan kick off, and then the war in Iraq started as I was graduating college, I really wanted to learn more about government and military service. I'd never even met anybody in the military. And there was a career day at Rutgers where I was going to school, and it was an FBI career day. And I went there and I said, I would love to learn about what the FBI does, how I can add and give back to the country. Tell me more. And they said, that's great, but you need military service. I said, okay, well, what does that look like? And I literally went around to Navy recruiters, Army recruiters. I learned about the SEAL teams from a naval recruiter in a strip mall in New Jersey. He literally tried to get me to sign on the spot. I was like, whoa, can I just want to learn a little bit here. But I really fell in love with the culture, the mission, the impact of the organization. I had the opportunity to meet a number of retired SEALs before I joined, and just hearing their stories about the brotherhood, their camaraderie, again, the impact that they're able to have. And then I just got to observe the culture firsthand, kind of from an outside-in look. And I just felt it. I was like, this is exactly what I want to go do with the next, I had no idea. I thought it would be 4 years of my life. It ended up being 11, but I just knew it was the right step and what I wanted to go do at that point in time.
So being an Navy SEAL. Being a Navy SEAL is like one of the most elite things in the military. It's super challenging. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's hard to get into. Do they recruit you for that from the beginning?
You're like, I know I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. I'm on the Navy SEAL track.
So there's a few different paths. And if you're familiar with the military structure, there's officers and there's enlisted. And I just enlisted in the Navy the day I graduated college. And I said, this is what I want to go do, and this is the fastest path to get there. Now,
So they didn't promise you it from the beginning, but they just said, you're on this path.
they basically what you can do is you can get promised a seat at the tryouts, which is BUDS, which is a 6-month training course in which they basically try to make you quit. And they do everything from throw you in the Pacific Ocean when it's 48 degrees and make you sit there, to make you carry telephone poles and run up and down the beach. And then they make you do that for a week straight without sleeping. And then whoever's still standing can go through the remaining 5 months of training. And then whoever's there at the end of that, you can join the SEAL teams. So that's kind of how it works. And when you join the Navy, it's basically saying, okay, I just want to go to tryouts. I actually want to go through this and see if I can make it. So graduated college, had a college degree, enlisted in the Navy, and if I didn't make it through all of that, I still signed up for 4 years. I would have been on a ship doing something that I had no intention of doing, nor did I want to do, but that was the risk you had to take. You had to say, okay, I'm willing to go for it.
All right, so you got to be a Navy SEAL. What is the craziest thing you got to do that you can tell us? Like, is this Mission Impossible shit?
No. I was just thinking about the craziest thing that I did that I actually really enjoyed is probably jump out of planes. We do it for fun. I always tell people the military takes the fun out of everything. So jumping out of planes is actually really fun. And we would go out and contract some of the best skydivers in the world, and they would teach us how to do this. And there's actually a whole skill behind it. It's fascinating. But then what the military does is they take a 60-pound rucksack or a backpack, and they strap it to you, and they put a really big parachute on that weighs 3 times as much as a civilian parachute, and it all of a sudden becomes like a little cumbersome. But we did that at night from 25,000 feet with 30 people. I mean, you're on oxygen at that altitude, and it's when you look back at it, you have night vision goggles on. You can basically see a 30-degree cone in front of you, and we all made it down safe. And it was pretty crazy. But there's a number of things in my career. I think skydiving and some of the things we did in the air was probably the craziest.
Man, a few months ago, I visited West Point and at the military academy, and like they've got like the football field in the middle of the, it's university, right? And they've got the football field in the middle and the parade grounds, and it's like, and then suddenly like there's 3 people parachuting down onto the football field. It was just part of weekly practice. But yeah, it was pretty cool. All right, so then when did you realize you were going to be an entrepreneur? Why did you stop being a Navy SEAL? Did you leave to go start being an entrepreneur? No, you left to go do, tell us that story. Why did you leave?
Yeah, so two separate things of why I left the SEAL teams and then why I ultimately founded this business years later. I was out of the SEAL teams for 7 years. And if I'm being honest, I didn't really know what was next after the military. I was just kind of, it felt like the right time to leave. I don't know if this is the right analogy, but if you look at professional sports, you have some folks that can play 25 years, and then some folks can play 3 years. For me, the 11-year mark was the right time in my career. I spent the last 5 years of my 11-year career at SEAL Team 6. I did 9 combat deployments overseas in just over 10 years. And it was a point in my life where not only were politics changing, but my life was changing. I was married. I got back from Afghanistan 2 weeks after my son, or 2 weeks before my son was born. So I actually made it. My wife thanks me for that. But it was the right time for me. I didn't know what the next step was. I thought, and I did, I had this interest in finance. I bought Google stock in 2009 while I was on deployment, and then it went up, and I was like, oh, I'm a genius. I'm made for finance. So let's go to business school. So I went to Wharton, got my MBA, and when I showed up there, I kind of thought I had 2 years to figure it out. I was like, okay, I'm coming out of the military, I'm going to business school. Business school is 2 years long. 2 years long. Certainly I'll have time to figure it out. I'll talk to people, I'll learn about a lot of things, and then I'll make a decision. Well, when you show up on campus at business school, week 2 starts recruiting. And I'm like, oh crap, well, I just have to make a decision. And again, I liked finance. I really did like investing. I liked learning about a lot of companies and different things. And I really just wanted to have a broad experience. So I learned about hedge funds. Learned about private equity. I learned about venture capital. This was some of the first exposure to this type of stuff for me. I went to Wharton and said I wanted to do finance. And when they asked me what kind of finance, I kind of didn't have an answer. I was like, I don't know. So when I learned about private equity, it was the ability to partner with management teams, the ability to actually operate and influence the companies that you buy, the ability to actually learn about what it takes to be a good investor, and you kind of get the whole spectrum of it. And then you work across industries and verticals. And so for me, I looked at it as, okay, well, I'm going to do 2 years of business school. How do I continue that education? And does that education take me in a direction that I want to go? I always had this thing in the back of my mind. I didn't know if it was entrepreneurship or not, but yeah, maybe I want to be a CEO one day. I really enjoyed leadership in the military, and I was like, yes. So if I'm going to go be a CEO, maybe I want to be a partner at a private equity firm for 25 years. Maybe I don't. I don't know the answer to that yet, but I'm learning a lot of skills that whichever direction I end up going, this will be super beneficial.
So real quickly, because we haven't specifically talked about it much in this class, we mostly focus on venture capital. Can you try to really simply explain how private equity is different than venture capital?
Private equity is similar to investing in the stock market, but not on publicly traded companies, obviously, where think of it as it is something that exists. These are companies that have been around for 10 or 15 years. There's a track record of revenue growth and profitability, and I'm going to use...
There's a lot of data.
There's a lot of data. There's a lot of things to go on. With venture capital, when I raised our seed funding, it was me, my 3 co-founders, and 13 slides, and a really great story. And that was it. There was no data. There was no track record. But private equity is able to look at track records of companies. Sometimes they're larger, sometimes they're not, depending on the scale of the private equity firm. And what you're able to do, because there's a track record of profitability, is you're able to use leverage to then multiply your returns. So you go and borrow money, you buy the company with a combination of debt and equity, and then you grow that business, and then hopefully you sell it. It's kind of like, the best analogy I came up with is, do you go and buy a house and try to fix the house and sell it for more? Or do you go and find an empty lot and build a house from scratch?
I think it's a good analogy. Okay, so the private equity firm you went to was?
Vista Equity Partners.
Vista Equity Partners. Is that how you got to Austin?
That's how I got to Austin.
One of the biggest and best private equity firms in the world. And then how'd you get from there to being an entrepreneur in residence at ABC? I think was the next step, right?
Yeah.
And starting a company.
Yeah, so I was at Vista. It was a world-class firm. Such a great experience. I loved the people that I worked with, and I actually loved doing the job. What I realized after 5 years of doing it, I kind of just picked my head up and said, okay, now I'm transitioned out of the military. I have this skill set. I'm actually really good at it. And I see the career path ahead of me. Is this what I want to spend the next 25 years of my life on? Is this what I want my career to be, not my next job to be? And the answer to that was no. And so I really had another moment of, okay, well, what impact do I want to go have on the world? And what am I passionate about? And that led me back into defense and national security. And I basically came to the conclusion that I want to go build products and solutions that help keep people safe for a really long time. Like, that's just what I want to go do with my life. And so with nothing more than that, I walked into my living room and I told my wife I have to quit Vista. And we had a pretty long conversation about it, but she's very, very supportive. She asked a number of questions, none of which I had the answer to, because I had no idea what I was going to go do. But it was the fact that, going back to the risk that I took when I joined the SEAL teams, it was, if I wanted to go do this, I was never going to figure it out working 80 to 100 hours a week for Vista or at a private equity firm. I needed to go and take the risk and really see if I can go and build this out. And look, if in 12 months I was still saying, hey, I want to go build a defense tech company and kind of just walking around and getting no traction, then there's other ways to go about getting into the defense industry. You can go work for a lot of these companies now that are starting up. There's other ways to go about it. But I really wanted to try to build something new and novel in the space.
So you went to, you went to great college. You went to the military, got into the most elite programs there. Then you came out, went to the most elite business schools. You come out of there, you end up at one of the best private equity firms. You got a pretty good track record. Then you ended up at 8VC. I think one of the best VC firms, certainly be here in Texas, and certainly for defense, right? And for working, and thinking about the government. So how did you meet them, and how do you get a job, or not a job, but how do you get in with 8VC? How do you get to be one of the entrepreneurs in residence in their build program, which is they have a more structured than most probably program for working with entrepreneurs in residence and trying to help them launch businesses?
Well, I have a very unique story. So, but the way that I boil it down and explain it is business is all based on relationships. So I was very fortunate to kind of get to know Joe Lonsdale, who's the founding partner of 8VC and a co-founder in Palantir, 2 or 3 years before I left Vista. And we had met a few times and really just never talked about it because I didn't even know I was going to go do this. So we were talking about, oh yeah, I invested in a business called Granicus while I was at Vista, and you built a business called OpenGov, and here's the similarities, and here's what we're seeing in the market. So we just kind of built a relationship naturally. And then I saw him just after I left Vista, and he was just kind of like, hey, what do you have going on? And I said, well, I left Vista, and I'm going to go build a defense tech company. And because the conversation I had with my wife was like, please don't ask me any questions because I don't know the answers yet. And that's when he told me about the build program at 8VC and what an entrepreneur in residence with 8VC actually means. And then we had a conversation of just the why. I love, there's a book by Simon Sinek that's called Start With Why. Like, why do you want to go do this? So I actually posed that question to him as well. And I was like, Joe, why does 8VC invest in defense? And that's when he told me the whole story about when he co-founded Palantir. And I knew none of this. But Palantir actually gave their software away to the Army for free because soldiers were dying in Iraq. And then the large primes sued Palantir and said, you can't do that, you're taking our revenue away. And it's like, who actually cares? We're trying to save lives. And that's what Joe's point was. And I'm like, this is a person I want to partner with. I'm not just, forget about investment aside, this is the person I want to partner with. And met Alex Moore. We built out the thesis behind Saronic together, and we ended up launching the business. And it was, to this day, like, they're phenomenal partners.
Awesome. So what's the thesis behind Saronic?
So we say we're redefining maritime superiority for the U.S. And our allies around the world. And I can talk about a little bit why that's not only possible, but it's absolutely critical. And we're just doing that through autonomy. So what are we doing? We're building attritable autonomous platforms that we can build economically at scale. We build autonomous boats.
Still a bunch of buzzwords.
Bunch of buzzwords. I love the buzzwords, by the way. We build autonomous boats for the Navy.
How big are these boats?
They're 6 feet, they're 14 feet, and they're 24 feet long. So we have 3 different products. We brought 3 products to market in under 2 years. That's very unique in the hardware space. That's very unique in the defense space, let alone the hardware defense space put together. And we do it a little bit differently. We do it a lot differently than every other company in the market. The maritime industry was very behind in technological advancement for a lot of reasons that we can get into. But long story short, 20 years behind any technology you would see in aerial drones or self-driving cars. So we went in and we saw this big gap in the market. And where we had to build conviction was, is the Navy going to change their buying behavior? Is there actual demand to fill that gap?
Because you basically have one customer. I mean, there's the allies, but they're going to do what the Navy does.
They're going to do what the U.S. does. That's exactly right. And so if you're not going to penetrate the U.S. Navy and be one of the leading providers to the U.S. Navy, Like, that's the bet you're making. And so, again, we saw this big gap, but then we really had to ask, like, does the Navy want, or will the Navy have to, is probably a better way to put it. Will they have to fill this gap?
Because they only do things they have to.
That's right. And they only do them when it's critical and urgent. Like, are you solving really, really, really important problems of the Pentagon? And so we looked at it and said, okay, are attritable platforms in the Navy going to be a thing? And then we analyzed the kind of what naval power actually means. And what naval power has meant historically is you have really large capital ships that are very, very expensive, and they take a long time to build, and you can just build more than the other people. Like, we had a really powerful defense industrial base back in World War II where we could build thousands of these ships every single year. That's why we had the most powerful Navy in the world. Last year we built, I think it was like 8 ships. It was single-digit ships, and we retired more than we built in a peacetime environment. And it's not from a lack of trying. The Navy has a stated goal of 355 ships, and we're in the kind of 290 to 300 range. And so that goal has been there for a decade, and our shipbuilding industry just can't support it. Now, okay, well, is that a problem? When you look at a potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific and all the rhetoric around China, and we learn about, okay, the Chinese have invested in their shipbuilding industry so heavily over the last 30 years. As ours was declining, theirs was growing to where I've seen numbers, and they have 250 times our shipbuilding capacity. So we looked and said, okay, there's a massive, massive technological gap, but there's also a massive need. Now, we don't know when the Navy's going to make this decision, but if you're making the bet that the US is going to want to have the most powerful Navy in the world for decades to come, they have to move in this direction. And so we said, okay, well.
It's a little bit like SpaceX moving to reusable rockets.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, hey, you're all doing it. It's got to go in this. Fundamentally, this is the direction it has to go. You're not there yet. We're going to get there ahead of you.
That's right. It has to go in this direction. And then the interesting thing that happened for our company that you can never control, there's always external forces on a business that you cannot control. We started Saronic 5 months before any news in Ukraine broke about small USV attacks against the Russian fleet. So now you're actually seeing the impact of these things real time in the real world environment where the Ukrainians have basically been able to immobilize the Russian fleet. And now we're just taking that to the next level for the US.
Yeah. So Mike Maples from Floodgate was been here recently talking about his new book, Pattern Breakers. I don't know if you had a chance to hear about that or read anything about it, but really great. And in that, he talks about identifying, especially in hindsight, which he recognizes, some of the trends, the indicators you can see of real breakout companies. And one of them he talks about is really being at an inflection point, a breakout moment, where consumer behavior or technology capabilities have changed, where it's not just incrementally getting better and better, but something's different right now. For example, like right now, we seem to be at a point where the cost to get stuff into space has just crossed the critical threshold. It says, of course, it's getting cheaper, but it just crossed the critical place. Uber was enabled by iPhones that had GPS. That was like this sudden new capability that you just couldn't do it before. And so, what's different now that makes this so important? What's different about why do we need fleets of autonomous boats and not big boats? And what's different now?
Well, going back to the today problem, the Indo-Pacific, and just how do you deter the Chinese from crossing the Taiwan Strait, right? The Chinese can read the same Wall Street Journal articles that the U.S. can. This is very public information about our shipbuilding industry. This is not, I'm not revealing classified information here. Like, everybody knows it. So when you look out and you say, okay, how am I going to provide a deterrence to what could be our largest adversary in the world, or potential adversary in the world? The large ships that we have today don't provide that naval deterrence. So as the U.S. Navy looks and says, okay, what do we need in place to be able to provide that? Because the whole goal is to not get in conflict in the first place. Like, if we do this right, nobody ever goes to war. But
the U.S. strategy is called overmatch. It's that we should be so much more powerful than them that nobody will actually fight with us.
That's right. And
That's what we want our strategy to be.
That's what happens when it's just like walking into a bar. If you see somebody that's 6'9", 250, you're probably not going to pick a fight with that person. But if they're about your same size and they bump into you and you push them and you're like, okay, well, like maybe we can fight. The real thing is like, how are we so powerful that we can then go engage in effective diplomacy, right? That's the whole key behind this. And then if we do get into a conflict, how do we win decisively? And we have to change the cost curve. We have to change the economics behind it. Because not only can't we build ships, so I'm going to take loss of life and human life, and I'm going to put it to the side for a second. I'll kind of come back to that, because to me that's critical, because I've seen that firsthand. Like, I've been in combat. It's not a Hollywood movie. It's not,
it's not theoretical.
Right. And so my thesis is, like, we should never send people into combat when we can send robots to do that job. So that's that part of the equation. But the just purely like math part of the equation is, look, destroyers cost almost $2 billion and they take 6 or 7 years to make. Aircraft carriers cost $10 billion and they take 10 years to make, and we have 11 of them. You can't afford, militarily, loss of life aside, you can't afford to lose a single one of those assets in a conflict anymore, because our defense industrial base just can't build them fast enough. And so how do you project power while keeping people and large assets very, very safe?
And also, is my understanding, I mean, what's a fight look like between an aircraft carrier and 10,000 tiny little cheap drone boats? Who wins that?
Our thesis is the drone boats, right?
Can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, just like, 'cause that seems like a fundamental change in just the economics and dynamic of war, in air, at sea, right? But it used to be, if you have the aircraft carrier, nobody better fuck with you, right?
Yeah.
I got an aircraft carrier, like, get the fuck out of my way, right?
Well, you've
but
seen
now
that.
it's a little different. They're like, wait, watch, we can take out your aircraft carrier.
You've seen the whole paradigm shift happen right before our eyes in the Black Sea. Like, we've seen it. The Ukrainians don't even have a navy. They didn't have a navy. They started putting technology on boats and just sending those boats and crashing them into large ships. And it's completely immobilized the Russian fleet to where they're like, we're not even leaving port. Now, how do you take that to a larger country or a larger adversary and like project naval dominance for the U.S.? You scale that up to the next level. You scale that into hundreds or thousands of surface drones that can control vast areas of the ocean, right? And you keep people safe.
Talk about real quickly surface versus underwater. My understanding also is it's much, much harder to have drones underwater because they need to be more autonomous because the communication doesn't work. Is that true?
Communication is super hard. If you look at kind of just submarines right now, even manned submarines, there's not real-time communications. They kind of surface, put an antenna up, and go back down. But the reality is, we need to have this technology in all domains. It's never just going to be Saronic building surface vessels that's going to be the entire U.S. military, right? We need, like, Andrew's doing great stuff on the Combat Collaborative Aircraft Program for the Air Force. We're working on the Navy stuff. Then we need subsurface drones. We need to attack this problem from every domain to make sure that we own every domain.
Saronic you've been raising a bunch of money. Usually when companies raise a lot of money, they hire a bunch of people. What kind of roles are you hiring for? Are there any jobs for students?
Yeah, we are always
graduating students.
We are absolutely always looking to hire top talent. We actually have one of our rock stars in the audience right here. But honestly, we are hiring across the board, everything from software and hardware engineering to product management to sales and business development to operations. We are moving extremely quickly. We just broke the 200 employee mark. Our team is growing really fast. We're expanding not only our product lines, but our manufacturing capacity. Because when we talked about the numbers that are important. It's becoming a real manufacturing and production company. We were talking about in the class earlier, like the power of like drawing comparisons to outline your company. Like, if you think about it, we're building Tesla for autonomous surface vessels. We build the hardware, we build the software, we integrate all that together, and we have a production and manufacturing line that can roll out autonomous surface vessels in hundreds and thousands. So that's where we're going. We say we're building a Tesla gigafactory for autonomous surface vessels.
All right, well, I hope you all have some questions. Let's open it up to some of the students. And did you need the microphone? You got one? Okay.
How's it going, sir? One of my first questions that I have, this kind of two-part question, is kind of following to what Josh asked, is as a leader, what do you do to build an amazing team? And the second part of the question is, what do you look in a person that you want on your team?
So I think those are I'll kind of answer those together. And the two things we look for at Saronic, one is talent. And I think that's just a given. We try to hire really A+ people, right? And you get a bunch of A+ people together and amazing things start to happen. But the other thing we look for, and this is harder, is culture and mission, right? Are you really bought into what we're building at Saronic? And then do you work together as a team, right? Like, how do you work as a team in a team environment? And that's harder to judge. So one of the things I tell every potential employee, and I actually just stopped interviewing every single person that we hired, and it kind of feels a little weird, right? I'm like, no, I still want to talk to everybody. I still do once they come on board, but they've removed me a little bit from the interview process. But I was very clear with what we're doing and what we're building. We are a defense company. If you don't want to work on a boat that might blow up, then we're just not the company, and that's okay. You could be the brightest person in the world, but then there's another like going back to the passion, right? What's your passion? What's your mission? And I challenge people to always go and find that, because I'm passionate about defense. It doesn't mean you are, and you are, and you are. What excites you? And that's what I try to screen for when I look for employees. It's like, what really excites you? And the thing that motivates me the most about our team is everybody's bought into the mission. It is powerful. You walk in and every single employee, like, there's such a buzz in our office, and everybody not only like really cares about it, but they understand the importance of it. They understand that, look, we haven't even talked about the competitive landscape and kind of what else exists, but there's no plan B. And the Navy needs this stuff now. So if Saronic doesn't deliver, they just don't have these solutions. And to me and to the entire team, like, that's not an option. So we look for A+ people, but then we really look for people that are tied in to that type of mission.
Hello, thank you so much for everything. I also have two little questions. The first is, did your degree in engineering help you in any way, creating your company? And the second one would be, what advice would you give to an engineering student that wants to create their own company? Do you think taking business classes is necessary? Thank you.
Can they be successes in what? Just still repeat the last part?
Do you think taking business classes is necessary when you're an engineering student? Because you did an MBA, but...
Yeah. The first part is, does my engineering degree help me in running the company? Other than the fact that I go and I mess with our software team and I say I can write the code sometimes, the answer is really no. If I even tried to write the code, things would break very, very badly and we'd be in a really bad place. So, not really, but I still have that technical background that as we're going through things, whether it's hardware decisions, software decisions, like, I'm able to process that technical information and guide the team in the right direction. And ultimately, I rely on them to make the true technical decisions. But being able to be there as a leader, understand the really deep information, and being able to guide them and provide inputs is super valuable. And then, do engineers need business school? I don't think anybody needs business school. I just don't. It's an education. There's I know, I believe in business. I liked it. I went that route. That's my story. But there's 10 different ways to get an education. And you can go learn about business by building a business. And arguably, you would learn more in 2 years of just building your own business than you would at business school. The question I always ask is, are you able to build your own business right now? Right? Do you have the ability to go and raise capital, build a team, do the things that are necessary to get off the ground so that you can get that education? Or is your path going to business school so that you can get to the point where you are able to? There's 100 different ways to kind of get that experience set. You can go to a startup and learn about it there, where there's 5 people, and go work there for 3 years. So I don't think business school is a necessity. Now, it helped me, but again, there's a lot of different ways to get that same education.
I know one thing you mentioned in your original thesis to also just develop the capability to just outman an adversarial opponent, but also another thing with the whole autonomous thing is that you also have to develop technology in a way that it also just outcompetes anything that an adversarial opponent has. So how do you guys determine within your company the amount to spend into R&D to just absolutely max out every ship you possibly produce versus just crank out as many ships as possible?
And do you have spies in China?
Obviously, no to the last question, Josh.
How do you know? How do you know what is your competition China? Is it other? I mean, how do you? He's kind of
the U.S. Navy's competition is China. I wouldn't say our competition is China. There's other providers that want to sell the same products to the Navy that we are. I would say that's our competition. But ultimately, we just want what's best for the country. Truly, if there's 5 different autonomous surface vessel companies that can all sell products to the Navy that can do what we like, we're all going to go work together.
That's going to be good for the country.
That's going to be great for the country, right? We're not trying to box anybody out of the market. We're just providing what we believe is the absolute best solution for the Navy to go and accomplish their ultimate goal. Now, to answer your question, how do we know what that is? We work with the customer. We talk to them. We listen to them. We signed 2 contracts with the Navy within 90 days of starting the company. We had that conversation before we actually built and designed our first product. Now, we had ideas. We had ideas for the company. We're like, this is where we're going to go. But then we actually just listened to the customer. We said, before we build this, tell us your problems. Don't tell us exactly what you want us to build, but tell us what your problems are. Tell us the mission set. How far do they have to go? How much power do they have to provide? What are you launching and recovering off of? Basically, what's the workflow here? And then we said, okay, we're going to go build a really, really efficient product around that workflow that you're looking to accomplish. So the way we figure it out is we work with the customer, we understand the mission, and then we build our products to solve those missions.
Did you get to work with them so early because you were a Navy SEAL? Because of 8VC? What opened that door?
It's a combination. We're going back to everything's relationship driven, but what really opened the door was the urgency and the need behind the problem set, right? We went to them and said, here's what we're building. Now, maybe they took my phone call because I had a background as a Navy SEAL, but why they listened was because we said, we think you have a really big problem, and here's how we're solving your problem. And what they said was, you're right. We do have a big problem, and if this solution actually works, it will solve our problem. So we want to learn more. And so it goes back to, are you solving a critical and urgent problem of your customer?
Hi, thank you. I kind of wanted to do a very crafted question here. It sounds like you're really solving a technological issue to save lives, but what are you guys doing to ensure that your guys' backends are safe from, let's just say hacking and things of that nature, right? Because you guys are producing something that it sounds like it's going to be mass produced. Doesn't sound like it's going to be too isolated. Maybe you won't have an individual computer on it, but maybe you will. And how secure are those so that they're not essentially the viability of the product being able to withstand cyber attacks and cybersecurity in this space?
on everybody's mind these days? And that is a great question. And I won't get into all the specifics of what we're doing, but you kind of break it into two chunks. One, you have to protect your business just as any business would protect itself. We have a security team, we have cybersecurity products. We make sure that our company is secure. But then at a fundamental level, we have to make sure each and every product is secure as well. How is our software locked down? What communications are we using with the government? Are we over SATCOM or line of sight? Are we using encrypted comm? Like, how does all that work when it's actually on the mission? And so there's kind of two parts to that. One is we make sure our business is very protected, and we have a lot of different ways that we go about that. And then you make sure that the products are locked down as well. And part of that is our software team building it the right way. And part of that is partnering with the government and understanding what like versions of communications or other things that are going to be on the platform.
If you want to work with the government, if you want to write software for the government, they have a lot of guidelines and ways to test it, to kind of like certify it, and to say, okay, this is government ready. This is ready to be used for the military.
Are these like one-time drones or are these recurring drones? But like what you're building, like, because I know that in the Ukraine use case you mentioned, they were used as more like a kamikaze approach rather than like something that is autonomous.
Yeah.
So
the answer is the answer is both, right? If you
want to give some use cases? So let me just tell you, when I've been to their office and I've seen some of the boats, and they look like a boat. It looks like a speedboat. Just instead of having like seats for a person, it's got a big box on top. Like where it just looked, just kind of like it's just smoother, and it's just some equipment on top, and so it just looks like a big boat. And so what that boat could do? Well, what would the boat do?
Well, it can do a variety of things, right? It's not just the use case that you mentioned, but you can do ISR, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. You can go out and
it might be out there with a bunch of sensors.
Bunch of sensors, collecting information, watching things, passing locations of things.
Doing border patrol, kind of, right?
Yeah. And so in
also,
those cases...
Does it launch drones off it? Like flying ones?
Our larger two platforms can, yes.
So it can fly. It's almost like a little mini aircraft carrier, right? Like it goes out, and then drones launch off of it, and then it can come back to it. Maybe, I don't know.
We haven't done an aerial drone recovery yet.
Okay,
so I don't want to pitch that.
Yeah. But you can imagine though, right?
You can imagine. Yeah, we'll get there.
And then, I mean, again, I'm just making stuff up, but like, I can imagine having some kinds of like rocket launchers, like shooting stuff off it. Like, is that in the future too?
We're getting in areas that I'm gonna bypass.
Yeah, so he'll pass, but I'm just imagining. So I don't know anything secret. I've just like walked around and looked at stuff, but that's all the stuff I'd imagine, right? Like, so it's just a platform. What do you put on it? Well, it can be a bomb itself. Like it could be this thing that just goes and crashes into stuff. It would seem better if you have it shoot stuff, like or to, or whatever, or it can do all, There's just a lot of things it can do. So, hopefully, it gives some pictures. You can deny to answer any questions. That's always fair.
Hi. So as a founder, and I'm sure you really want to be involved, but at the beginning, like an engineer and a founder, how did you build up the tech team and understand, like, here are my limits and here's where I can help?
So we kind of understood early on, we mapped out the company and said, going back to kind of how we're building a hardware company, we're building a software company, and we're building a company that sells into government. So we really need experts in those three verticals that complement each other and all come together. And so there's three other co-founders other than myself. So Doug Lambert, Viv Altakar, and then Rob Lehman. Doug runs our engineering team. He has 15 years of experience in maritime autonomy. So it's basically like, who's gonna build the boats? Doug's gonna build the boats. And then Viv was employee 20 at Anduril. He was there for 4 or 5 years. He ran software, computer vision, sensor fusion at Anduril. And so we said, okay, well, we have boats. We need really cool software. Who's gonna build the software? Well, Viv's gonna build the software. And then we had to put all of that together and manufacture the end-to-end capability. Now we have that. Who's gonna sell it? Who's gonna sell this to government? Now, I know the government mission, but my expertise was not in government sales. And if you've ever tried to explore the government acquisitions process, the spider web that you will go down, just understanding budget line items and POM processing, like it is a whole nother universe. And so Rob Lehman, who's our chief commercial officer, had been doing that for 20 years, came on as a co-founder. And so now we had hardware, software, and the ability to actually sell into the government with somebody that really knew how to map the congressional landscape. How do you tie folks on Capitol Hill who actually control the budget? Like, Congress controls the budget for the Pentagon. If you want to get budget approved, you have to go through Congress. Then, how do you get to the senior admirals within the Navy? How do you understand and ensure that you're solving strategic initiatives of the fleet? Then, how do you get to the end users? Right? How do you get to the warfighters, the people that are actually going to be pushing this off of another boat and sending it into combat? How do you tie all of that together and then go to the program office or the person that's actually going to write the contract? So when we thought about bringing it back to your question, when we thought about building the founding team, it was like, okay, we have to build a hardware company, a software company, and then a government lobbying company, and put all of those things together to be successful here, because that's what's missing in the space. Nobody has brought the whole thing together. There's boat companies, there's software companies, there's government sales companies, maybe there's a boat company that can sell into government, but they don't have the software. Nobody has brought all of it together, and that's how you really get to scale.
Hi, I have two questions, one of which is, as a seasoned entrepreneur and also a former investor, I was wondering what advice would you give for current entrepreneurs to get in front of other people, how to get other people to be interested in your product and collaborate with you? And I guess second is just a little more of like, what are your thoughts of, because you're building a drone company, won't there also be potential for startups to just counter that drone company as well?
So first question is, how do you get in front of others, or how do you just, get people excited about your company? And the answer is like, you have to be excited about it. You have to build that conviction, and then you have to go tell the story. And you have to tell the story to everybody. I like to tell the story. I was on Capitol Hill pretty much the day we started the company, and I had a PowerPoint slide of an electric surfboard with a quadcopter on top of it. And I was using all those fancy buzzwords that I used earlier. We're going to build attritable autonomous platforms. They're economical, they're scalable. This is going to change the future of the Navy. And what I realized was people weren't even looking at the picture. The picture is just what brought it to life for them, right? But it was the thesis behind it. And then we worked with the customer and we designed the actual boats that actually make a difference on the battlefield. But it's the ability to bring something to life that doesn't yet exist. That's powerful, and you have to go do that. And part of it is taking a risk. And I mean, for probably the first year of the company, I was waiting for somebody to be like, "No, dude, you're full of shit. Like, this isn't a thing." And you got to put yourself out there. And I used to challenge people even before we started the company. I used to say, "Please tell me when I'm wrong. Like, stop me cold in this. Stop me cold. Don't let me go on with my thesis. Tell me when I am wrong," because I didn't want to go and tell my story and have people just nod their heads, and then you go and start this business, and then you own it. Once you start it, like, there's no turning back. Like, I'm in this. We're gonna dig out of this hole, and we're gonna make this work. So I wanted to know before we got in it. So the answer is, like, go get in front of anybody and everybody that will listen to you. Try to leverage your connections and your network, and then always give people a ask. Like, if you're talking to Josh and you're telling him your story, "Hey Josh, do you know like 3 or 4 people that I could talk to that are in your network?" If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Gordon Doherty, one of our partners and great, runs the Founders Academy. He has a great saying that sales, which all of this is different variations of sales, is a transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another. And typically it actually is a very emotional thing. You use reasoning and logic to try to justify it, but mostly it's about most people make very emotional decisions. And to that point, like, being a great founder is you have to bring people along with you. You have to bring in co-founders, you have to bring in investors, you have to bring in customers. And in the end, no matter how smart your thing is or what a good idea it is, if you can't convince anybody else, it's probably not going to work unless it's purely like a completely physical creation that, is just IP. It's really not going to work because making it successful really requires getting other people on board just every step of the way.
Hi, thank you for your service so much.
Thank you.
My question is, I saw a congressional hearing recently where they held up a bag of standard bolts and it cost like the taxpayers $40,000 for the standard bag of bolts. I hear Palmer Luckey blame this on the cost plus pricing strategy used by our military industrial complex. So my question is to you, are you doing anything to reduce this waste and innovate in this negotiation front?
100%. I'd say Palmer and I are very aligned on this thought process where cost plus is a completely broken business model. It incentivizes a company to take longer and charge more and just even build it more expensive. So what it means is if I tell the military, hey, I'm going to go and build you this F-35, I can actually bid whatever I want. And then my contract doesn't, once I start building it, I just say, it actually costs this, and they have to pay me more. So you bid low to kind of win the contracts. That's why they have the saying, the lowest bid wins, right? But then the incentives are to drag it on and make it cost more because you actually earn more as a business. So if you have a 10% profit margin on $1 million, you make $100,000. Well, on $1 billion, you actually make 10% of whatever you charge the government. And this is how it works. It's completely broken. It's kind of resulted in this defense industrial base that doesn't innovate. And it's actually shrunk over time, pretty dramatically, where we had 55-ish large defense primes in the early 90s. That's gone all the way down to 5. And there's a number of reasons for that, consolidating budget, and we can look back and say, okay, hindsight's 20/20, we should have never done that. But the reality is we did, and here we are. And so it's how do we get out of it? And you need private capital, you need entrepreneurs, you need startup companies to come in with a new way of thinking that are just like, hey, we're gonna go and build the best products that we can because we know the government needs them. We're going to build them as fast as we can. We're going to put them in the warfighter's hands. We're going to see what works. We're going to see what doesn't work. We're going to iterate on that. We're going to make it better. And then we're going to build another product because we know they need more stuff. And what the large primes do is they say, okay, government, tell me your problem. Okay, give me $5 million and I'll write you a paper on how I can solve your problem. And that paper will take me 3 years. I'm not even exaggerating, by the way. They won't do anything unless they get paid for it. Not even write a paper. So they'll take 2 or 3 years to write this paper on a problem that the government's already identified and it's a really large problem. Then they'll go and underbid, and then they'll take longer, and they'll charge more on the contract, and then it just kind of, that cycle continues until somebody comes in and breaks it. So that's what we're doing as well. We're coming in, we're building about as fast as we can. Again, three different products to market in under 2 years. Really getting them in the hands of warfighters. We've done multiple demonstrations. My team was on both the East Coast and the West Coast this month, doing live demonstrations with the Navy, taking that feedback and going and making our products better.
And so just to be clear on how yours is different, and I may be wrong about this, so help me make sure, see if I got it right, but as opposed to saying, we need 1,000 boats, and you getting a cost plus contract and then making them and charging them for them. You're saying, we're making these boats. Do you want to buy any? Here's how much they cost. Is it like that or no?
Not really. We're saying we're developing these boats because we believe you need them and we have the ability to build 1,000 boats. I'm not going to go and just build 1,000 boats because that's a lot of money and have them sitting on the shelf somewhere.
Right.
But what we're saying is we're going to
But ahead of
absorb,
time, you
we're
know.
going to absorb the development costs to fully productize this. And just like you would buy a PlayStation, the boat costs $500. The PlayStation costs $500. You want to order 1,000
There's no
PlayStations,
chance
it's
that it costs
$500.
extra.
Meanwhile, what the cost plus model is, hey, we want these boats. How much would it cost for you to build them? Go develop them, go make one, show me what it looks like, and we're going to pay you for all of that.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question about, like, you mentioned how you, like, sort of, after you graduate college, you immediately went out and decided to enlist in the military, and there was no guarantee that you would be able to, like, join the SEAL program. And also, you mentioned, like, leaving Vista. I just want to ask, like, how did you evaluate, like, the risk involved with doing that? And, like, what sort of was your rationale for deciding to move forward?
For me, it was really centered around self-awareness and passion. I knew in both of those scenarios, I knew that was exactly what I wanted to go do. And then I know about myself that it's just all or nothing. Like, I'm either just all in or I'm all out. And that's just, there's just no in between. Some people start businesses like as a side hustle and they keep their current job and they started on that. Like, that doesn't work for me. And so I knew that. And so in both of those scenarios, I just had a question of like, is this really, really, really what I want to go do? And in both of those scenarios, the answer was yes. And so then it became like actually really easy because it was, well, 50 years from now, what am I going to regret more? Never trying or trying and failing? You don't actually know the outcome of it. Like Saronic's doing like very, very well right now. We're 2 years in. We don't actually know the outcome yet. But this is exactly what I want to be doing. And I told my wife 2 weeks after I left Vista, I was like, did not have Saronic, didn't even have the idea for Saronic. Like, hadn't met Joe. And like, I went to an event, actually here at Capital Factory, and it kind of brought people from the defense tech community together, and I was just fortunate to be able to kind of walk around. And I went home and I told my wife, I don't know how any of this ends. We might have to sell our house, we might end up in a box, but this was 1,000% the right decision because it's exactly what I want to be doing.
My other question was, like, you mentioned, I think you said 3 products in 2 years. So you talked about like how you like hired different people to, I guess, sort of almost like specialists for different aspects. But was there anything else you guys did, whether it was like the procedures that you guys followed that allowed y'all to like develop so quickly, especially because it's so technical?
It's a combination of things. It's absolutely 1,000% a credit to our team and the team we built. But going back to the capital that we were able to raise to give the team the resources that they needed to move that quickly, and then tying them into the customer. So the relationship with the customer, the capital, and an A+ team, and you brought those 3 things together, and special things started to happen. If we had a great team with all the resources in the world, but no customer, and they basically didn't know what to build, would we have brought 3 products to market in 2 years? Probably not, right? Or if we didn't have the resources to do it. Okay, a customer could have all the needs they want, and we could have the best team in the world, but even the resources to go do it, then are we gonna bring 3 products? Like, probably not. And so we were able to bring these 3 things together, and we've always looked down the road at what's our end goal. Our end goal was to build thousands and thousands of highly capable autonomous surface vessels. We knew that. So we layered in hiring for things like manufacturing very early on. Our third hire is actually our VP of manufacturing, came out of SpaceX. And I remember having the conversation with them, like before we brought him on, like, we're not actually manufacturing anything yet. What are we gonna do? And we went through the conversation, and at the end it was just like, if you don't start building in the frameworks for manufacturability up front, when you get to the end of your prototype, you're going to have to redo all of that, and you're never going to be able to scale. So we knew super early on that you could design a cool boat, and you can write the best software code in the world. And if you can't put it all together and build thousands, then it's not going to move the needle for the military. It's not going to move the needle for the Navy. So we just kind of looked at all of that and said, okay, where do we need not just really good talent, but where do we need the best people in the world in these different verticals to really accelerate the business? And bringing the people, the capital, and the customer all together let us move very quickly. And then it was just listening to the customer and the customer needs and understanding, okay, these are really big problems. Oh, you need another product. Okay, well, we have the team and the capital to go do that. Like, we're gonna go do it.
You know, I just want to double tap on find the best people in the world. Like, of course you should find the best people in the world. Like, why wouldn't everybody find the best people?
Don't ask me how I did it. I have no idea.
I mean, just like, how do you do? How do you do it? Like, how do you find the best manufacturing person in the world? How do you go get somebody from Anduril? Like, because you seem to do it.
It's relationships.
We had Justin Lopez from Base Power in here,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you're familiar with them, but you know their story. Like, I mean, similar kind of thing. They just like assembled this all-star team.
I look back and there's story after story of random connections, relationships. Vib I met through 8VC, and Alex Moore was like, I got the guy for you. And I was like, okay, I'm sure you do.
That's
I don't know.
that's a great role
Right?
that early investors can
And
have, right?
he came in and we sat down for 2 days, and I was like, holy shit, like, we gotta go build this business together. And Doug
You just instantly clicked.
Instantly. And Doug was in Austin building autonomous submarines. He spent 10 years of liquid robotics, 15 years of experience in this space. He sold the company to Boeing. Like, who else like this has his resume, let alone sitting here in Austin building autonomous submarines of all things? Like, it was just crazy the way things came together.
So it sounds kind of like I would call this manifesting. You like projected out there what you were looking for, and then it came to you.
It came, you searched for it, right? But
it wasn't so much like a hunt. Like you like went out and like surgically found, I'm going to go get this person.
No, it was not surgical at all.
Yeah.
John, our VP of manufacturing, who I was just telling you about, he had just left SpaceX. He joined Yeti, moved to Austin, joined Yeti 2 months before I met him. I was talking to a team guy that was working at SpaceX who's like, hey, this guy was a legend at SpaceX. He just joined Yeti. He's not looking for a new job. He literally just left. He's just moving to Austin. But if you're thinking about manufacturing, you should just talk to him, like pick his brain. So I go, I have a beer with him, and I'm not even thinking about making a pitch or anything. I'm just like telling him about what we're doing, trying to understand what he did at SpaceX. And I told him, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go disrupt the Navy. And he looks at me and he goes, I've been building coolers for a month and that's way too slow. I want to come do that. And I was like, oh, all right.
And that's a transfer of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Like you got him so excited that he was like, "Can I quit my job and come work with you?"
The one of our other early hires is our lead naval architect, and this is a guy that was in the Navy for 10 years, and I used to spend hours on LinkedIn just looking for our early hires. Not the co-founding team, but like the first 10 or 20 hires. Like I spent 8 hours a day on LinkedIn, like just scrolling profiles, and I found his profile on LinkedIn. I sent him a LinkedIn note. I'm like, dude, we got to talk. And of course, I had like this very well crafted LinkedIn outreach. I maxed out my InMail, by the way. And he tells the story. He's like, I'm working in the Navy. I mean, he worked on every single autonomous surface vessel that the Navy touched, from a large USV, meaning like a 200-foot autonomous ship, down to a small boat. I get this guy on the phone. And I'm like, dude, we're changing the Navy. He goes, I hung up the phone and I thought to myself, this guy is out of his mind. This guy in Austin, Texas has gone crazy. But we talked again and we talked again. He goes,
that made him want to talk to you again.
yeah. And then he talked to Rob and he talked to the rest of the team. And he's like, you guys, this is how you solve the problem. He's like, we do have a really, really big problem. And everything falls back to shipbuilding. And nobody's rethinking that problem. and this is the way we solve it, and I want to be on that team. And so how exactly we identify these folks, I don't know. But to your point, we got them excited. When you find these people, you have to get them excited about your mission. And people are really, really bought in. And I consider myself very fortunate for that, by the way.
So, you've spoken about manufacturing and how that's kind of the problem, the big part of the problem that you're solving. So I want to ask more about it. How is Saronic specifically solving, how are you able to ramp up the manufacturing, and how are your ships designed for manufacturing? Is it purely the size, or is there more to it?
So when I talk about manufacturing and naval power, I want to be very clear, it refers to large naval ships and very big capital assets. And
you aren't 3D printing them.
We're not 3D printing them. We're thinking about, like, how does the Navy exist today? They exist with destroyers and cruisers and aircraft carriers and surface action groups and, like, all of these things. We can't build those anymore. So now the question becomes, well, what do you need to have the most powerful Navy in the world? And so what we're building is very, very scalable boats. So again, 6, 14, and 24 feet. Now you can say, okay, well, there's a lot of people in the world that can build boats, and we've been building boats for a long time, right? How many boats can Mastercraft make? A crap ton of boats. But they can't make autonomous boats, right? And this is where Tesla came in and kind of proved out that model of, look, the CEO of Ford was on this great podcast. I mean, it was like a year or two ago. And he was talking about why fundamentally Tesla can control every single aspect of their car through software. And I'm like, dude, I got in my Chevy Tahoe today and I can't connect to Apple CarPlay. Like, it's so bad. But it's fundamentally, like, if you're not designed for software first, if you don't control every single hardware software interface on your platform from the very, very beginning, you can't build and scale autonomous platforms. And so we really had to start from the ground up. And now we're thinking about, like, okay, we are a boat builder, but we're more than a boat builder. We're an autonomous boat builder because we've optimized for that. We've integrated every sensor. We've selected every piece of hardware to integrate with our software. We have the most advanced autonomy, and then we put it all together. So we take a lot of things from boat building, from high rate manufacturing in boat building that you might see at a company like Mastercraft, but then we apply it very differently, just like Tesla has for cars.
You know, I had one of the first Teslas, the little orange sports cars that were little roadsters they made first. Side funny note, but last night I had dinner and it turned out that I was with 2 other people that had number 3, number 16, and I had number 86. So we had like 3 of the first hundreds. They both still have theirs. I got rid of mine. And that car was really an experiment of an electric car. It was really just like, it was a Lotus Elise chassis. It was like a regular little sports car, and they just ripped out the engine and tried to make it electric. And it worked. It was, that was their test. And then the Model S came out. I had I think I had number 256 or 6, something like that, like one of the first couple hundred Model S's. And that was dramatically different. What was so amazing about the Model S and every other car that's come since then, and it's just what you said, but just saying it a little bit different way, is that every other car you've ever been in before is a gas engine with a whole bunch of computers attached to it. Like one to do this and one to do that and one to do this and like one to control the fuel injection. Like, it's just like, and they just like come up with a new thing and they latch another computer onto it. And that's why none of it works. Because like they aren't really all made to talk to each other, and they're like all trying to make it all go, and it's really all rotating around the engine. And a Tesla is a computer with a car built around it. Like that's what it is. It's a computer, and then they built the whole car around one computer. And so yeah, everything's easy, everything's integrated, and it's just a fundamentally different approach.
Hi. So most of the entrepreneurs we see here are pretty young, just came out of college, but you did this when you were like at an older age with wife and children. I was wondering, how do you convince other like more grown folk with actual like grown responsibilities to come and bet it all on this new untested company?
Now that you're a grown up.
My wife would argue that statement, by the way. For me, it was the right time in my life to take this bet, and for a few reasons. One, I have a very, very supportive wife who was 100% behind me, who had a very wildly successful career in her own right. And then two, as I thought about with kids
And a sugar daddy.
Yeah. Well, I tried to get perennial unemployment, but that didn't fly. So I had to go start Saronic. When I thought about what I wanted to teach my kids, I always wanted to teach my kids, and I would say this time and time again. I don't know if I was mentally reinforcing it to myself or what it was. I was like, I would rather teach my kids to go after their dreams and end up in a box than to not follow their dreams. And it just came to the point where I was at this decision of, do I really want to go do this? And the answer was yes, like this is my dream. Well then, if you want to teach your kids that, you got to do it. And this is the one thing I realized with kids is, you say whatever you want, but they're watching everything you're doing, and they're just copying you. And so if that's what I wanted to instill in my children, well, then I really had to walk the walk. And so that's kind of how I thought about it, and what gave me the confidence to just take that risk.
How old is your oldest now?
So my son is 9, and then my daughter is 8.
Yes, so this is what he said is generally true. I will caveat, though, that right around 12, 13, they stop trying to be exactly like you. It's quite crushing. You're used to this whole thing of them idolizing you and looking up to you and seeing how great you are, wanting to dress like you, wanting to cut their hair like you, like whatever. And then they go into like, I'm a teenager and I want to figure out how I'm not like you, and it's soul crushing. But enjoy it while you got it.
I'm seeing the flashes of it, and it's absolutely terrifying.
Enjoy it while you got it. It's very depressing.
Terrifying.
Yeah. All right, what else we got?
So I had a question about how did you actually get a chance to speak with the Navy? And you said that you were thinking about building a defense company before speaking to the Navy. And you said that your main customer was going to be the government. Would it not make more sense to talk to the customer first before developing certain technologies?
So when I left Vista, I didn't have to talk to anybody to know what I wanted to go do. And that was, I wanted to go build a defense tech company. Now, where I needed to talk to folks, and this was very similar to how I did diligence at Vista, right? Whenever I did diligence on a business at Vista, the first thing I did was write a simple 4 or 5 page paper. Just laid out all the ideas. Here's what I think the market is. Here's the competitive landscape. Here's how I think I can build something different. And here's an actual 5 bullet point thesis on building out a company. That thesis might turn out to not be true. But you have to write it and then you have to go test it. That's when I started talking to folks within the Navy. And that's when I started on leveraging my background a little bit. I was able to get folks on the phone that I had worked with, folks that they put me in touch with, and really was able to test that thesis in the market. And again, asking people don't let me just go off on a tangent, nod your head and say great idea. Stop me when I'm wrong. Please, you'll be doing me a favor. But it would,
on that particular one, I really appreciate that comment. It's certainly something I try to incorporate a lot, and in customer feedback and things like that. I actually try to even take it a little bit further, and rather than saying, here's what I think is true, tell me if you think it's wrong, I almost ask them the reverse question, you don't think that's right, do you? Almost make it harder for them to agree with me, and make them actually no, actually, yeah, I do agree with you. Anyway, push it even further.
You guys should check it out.
Don't ask for the answer you want.
Yeah. There's a great book called The Mom Test, and it's 60 or 70 pages. You can read it in a day, and it just talks about how do you get the truth out of your customer, because you don't want them to just nod their heads and say you're right. That's the last thing you ever want to do, because then you're going to waste 2 years of your life building something that they're not going to buy anyway. And you're going to have to try to fix it, and you're going to have to try to get them to buy it, and it's not just 2 years.
The
So
Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick.
yeah.
Got it.
So going back to your question of, that's when I really started leveraging my network and then the network of my co-founders and others on the team to really dig in with the customer. And we did talk to the customer before we actually built the first platform. You know, I, again, brought it to life with a PowerPoint slide, but we didn't actually bend metal or invest resources to go and build that product. I spent like $5,000 or $10,000 and I built it in my garage. Anyway, we don't have to go down that road.
Hello. Actually, you answered every aspect of your business, but I was wondering, where do you see yourself in the 5 next years? And besides that, I was thinking this autonomous business plan can be scaled to bigger cargo warships. So in general, like probably we don't necessarily should see air carriers, the bigger ones. So I'm like, was wondering, how do you see? And I'm from Iran, so like we see like right now in the Gulf area, we have a lot of problematic issues going on. So I was like, can be also applied to that region.
I always pause when somebody asks me where we see ourselves in 5 years, because we're 2 years in and we're very quickly becoming the primary provider of small unmanned surface vessels to the U.S. Navy. I would have thought...
Just seriously, like the speed at which this company has grown is quite remarkable to have launched. You're how many years old?
2.
2 years old to have launched it and raised. Have you announced how much you've raised?
$250 million.
$250 million from when you launched it 2 years ago to have like big boats in product, that are actually there working. Like it's really impressive.
No, it's insane. We some folks on our team actually went and tried to find another hardware company that has brought a product to market in under 2 years, and they literally couldn't find one. And so the fact that we brought 3 is truly remarkable. The fact that we've been able to now work as closely as we have with the U.S. Navy. I thought, if you asked me when we started the company what success looks like in year 7, this is the answer I would have given you. So 5 years from now, where are we going to be? I don't know. I honestly don't know. There's a lot of areas that we're going to look to expand into. To your point of, can this be applied to larger vessels? Like, nobody's building autonomous surface vessels well at any size. At any size. Like large ships, small boats, it's all being done as it's a boat first. It's not a computer first. And you have to build large ships that way as well. And so we're going to look and see like what makes sense for us to expand into. But I always tie it back to the mission. Like, what's the mission? What's the problem for the customer? Don't just go and build okay, I'm going to go build a 100-foot ship or whatever it is. Say, what's your problem? What's the mission? What's the most efficient platform to solve that? And then we can incorporate all of the things that we build into our platforms today into that new platform or that next platform. And I think there's a great quote from, I think it was either Bill Gates or Steve Jobs that says, everybody overestimates what they can accomplish in a year and underestimates what you can accomplish in a decade. So if you're willing to let it compound for 10 years, you can accomplish a lot. And look at the iPhone isn't even 20 years old, and it's completely changed society. It didn't do that in 1 year. In 1 year, you couldn't even get it outside of, you had to have AT&T. And I was like, I'm not switching to Verizon. I'm going to keep my BlackBerry. But 10 years later, you can accomplish a lot.
Very true. All right, we got time for a couple more questions, maybe 2 or 3.
Hey, I kind of coming back again. Thank you again for asking the questions. I got one more question and more to relate to your military experience. What are some lessons that you took away from military experience that apply to building your company?
So the first thing is just team first. And I tell this to our entire organization. Like, it is the team first. It is the mission first. Now, I try to lead from the front. I tell everybody to set the example. We have a great saying from the teams: in the absence of leadership, lead. And so what that means is everybody in our team,
I love that.
everybody in our team is a leader, and you want to set the example. You really want to lead from the front. And then what I saw was you really have to support your team. Going back to the resources, right? Making sure the team has the resources that they need to be successful. And what I tell our team is, look, we're moving mountains. We're doing things that people don't even think we're probably, you can't do things this quickly. This timeline is crazy. And we're asking them to do it again and again because the country actually needs it. And it's vitally critical. But I, as a leader, and I tell this to every single person that comes on in the company, I, as a leader, will never ask you to do something that I am not willing to support 1,000% and put my career on the line for. We're either all in or we're all out, and we're all in together. And so those are lessons I take from the military. And then, you know, there's other like personal lessons and like key takeaways that are like, one of the best things, what's the difference between an amateur and a professional, right? An amateur does something until they get it right. A professional does something until they can't get it wrong, right? And so it's, did I prepare? Did the team prepare? Are we prepared? And then, you know, one of the other ones is bad news never gets better with time. It just doesn't. So I try to preach transparency through the organization. If there's a problem, come tell me about it. My job is to help you solve that. It's to go and knock down walls for you. It's not to do your job. It's just to help you knock down walls. If I don't know about the problem, I can't help you solve it.
Yeah, so thanks again for coming to the class and speaking with us. But kind of a more general question. So going back to the sort of cost plus versus like Moneyball military approach, where do you see this, how do you see this sort of collaborative spirit taking shape? Yeah, how do you see this collaborative spirit taking shape with this sort of Moneyball military approach where it's like, okay, the military needs the solution made. You have these other companies that like are creating other products that are different from yours, but still kind of getting at a similar, essentially getting at the same problem. But you need, like, there clearly is a need for you and other companies to kind of share this knowledge because like you're working to the same goal. How do you approach this while still creating sort of a profitable business, and how do you see like they're not really competitors, I guess, in a way, but like how can other people approach or how can other people enter this space while still maintaining like this collaborative environment, I guess, if that's clear.
Yeah, so the way I'll answer that is, like, there's obviously a lot of companies in the defense space. There needs to be a lot of new companies and new innovation in the defense space because of all the things we talked about. Now, there's still a very big need for the large primes that we have today. I talk about all the holdups of shipbuilding and destroyers and cruisers and aircraft carriers. Like, those aren't going away. There's a really, really important mission for those. And for us, it's how do we extend the range, capability, and survivability of destroyers and carriers so they're more effective and they provide more impact on the battlefield and they stay relevant longer. So if that means we have to work with Huntington Ingalls or Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or whoever, like, we want to do that, right? We actually want to do that. And if Raytheon has missiles or something else that the Navy wants to put on our boat, like, we want to do that. So what we built is a platform, and we talk about vertical integration, and that was actually like a bad word in the Navy for a little while, because it kind of, or in the military in general, because the perception was that it was a closed off ecosystem, right? But vertical integration does not mean closed architecture. So we built in a very, very open architecture. It's like, look, just tell us what you want to integrate with. Tell us who you want to work with. I don't care, like, we'll work with them. You want to run other software on our boats? Like, go ahead. Like, I promise you, you won't want to do that. Like, you just won't. So we build the best products, but then we'll work with whatever or whoever else the customer determines is right for the mission.
Thank you. I kind of want to, in the same fashion, I wanted to ask you, I know that you maybe talked about the domestic market, not really having anybody else doing what you're doing, right? But have you guys done any analysis to your overseas competitors? I'm going to keep, pointing at Ukraine for what they did. They did it on the fly. Has anybody else taken wind of this, and have you seen anything like this in the markets?
What they've done in Ukraine is very, very impressive. I won't get into the specifics of what we've learned from the experience in Ukraine and what the advantages and disadvantages of the technology that they have is. But what I will say is that nobody is bringing it all together, right? Really scalable autonomy, boat manufacturing, and advanced capabilities in a way that we are. Like, we are quite literally the only company in the world doing it this way. Can't get into exactly why, for obvious reasons. I'm happy to talk about it offline a little bit more. But again, like, we're thinking about how do you put hundreds and thousands of boats in the water? How do you operate one-to-many, really have collaborative teaming, collaborative swarming with drone boats, with working together with unmanned aircraft and manned assets, for that matter, talking about the military the way it is. It's how do you integrate into the joint fighting network and work with everything else on the battlefield. And the type of scale that we're talking about and the technology that we're building really isn't being done anywhere else.
All right, so I've got one more question for you. It's one I often ask, but just trying to imagine yourself back in undergraduate college, back at Rutgers, and back in time, and knowing everything you know now, and imagining aspiring entrepreneurs who know they want to start something, maybe have an idea, maybe aren't sure what to do next. Any deep, in particular, piece of advice you'd leave for them?
Don't think you can't do it, because you can. The question you have to ask yourself, or I would ask myself, is it the right time for you? And going back to the education piece, is there something else that I want to learn before I want to go do this? But entrepreneurship's a calling. Like, it is. If you want to do it, you're going to get called to it, and then that calling is never going to go away. You're always going to feel it. And there were many points in my life where I was like, that would be really cool to do that. But I have no idea.
It wasn't a call.
No idea. Well, I didn't even know where to start. So I just said, I'm going to go learn more another way until I figure out how to start. And one of the best ways to figure out how to start is by becoming part of a community that has done it before, right? I talked to AVC, and they're like, I have this great idea. I can go start this business. They're like, oh, we've actually started hundreds of businesses. We know exactly what to do and how to get this off the ground. And we literally, once we made the decision to go, the company was formed in 2 weeks, and we were off to the races. It would have taken me 8 months by myself to figure that out, just to get the legal, accounting. I had no idea what I was doing. But you have people around you that did. So don't think that you can't do it. And if it's the right time for you, then just send it. You're never going to know if you don't take the risk.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. Thank you for spending this time with us. I know you've got a family, you've got this exploding company with 200 employees, and all these other people that really would like your time and attention. And that's why it means so much that you come spend this time with us. So thank you for coming here today, and on a particularly busy day, just for other reasons too. It means so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
So last up, I'm going to mention again that next week we've got Jason Calacanis coming. We're doing the last $1,000 pitch off. We'll be downstairs, and I would really love your help getting as many people here pitching as possible, filling up that room, and making sure we're just getting all the great companies here, so we can get them. We can try to help them next year in the lab.
And then one more thing, I'm going to stop you. I still have your C note in my pocket.
Oh, sweet.
We're giving it away?
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. I forgot. No, I thought it's.
I don't want to keep your
I
money.
thought this was related to the other thing. Yes, we never announced the winner. So yeah, who wins the $100?
So I was between Front Row and was it Fit Check? And I am going to give it to Front Row.
Awesome. Both great pitches.
Yeah,
And that was the first time seeing Front Row. Come on up here, Front Row.
Great job. And I actually think you're undersizing your market. I went to a large college and I sat in the back of an auditorium and couldn't see a thing. So
Awesome.
congratulations and good luck.
And then the last thing we'll do before we take attendance is take a big selfie. So everybody come pile up in the middle here.
And then I have one announcement before all of you leave.
And everybody, you got to pull in tight. All right, ready? Everybody give a hook up. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, great. Yes,
Also, guys, we're sending out the TA and lab application on Canvas, and I'll also put the links up right now for you to grab. So if you're interested in applying for the lab or applying to be the TA for the next 2 semesters, scan those QR codes. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hi, my name's Jonah. Great, thank you. So, I want to also ask you to go I know
I was just thinking about you because I looked at your Instagram. You got into a co-host. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank
oh my
you.
goodness.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, I wanted to tell you that. And I'm in cell right now.
really? That's so exciting. Oh my gosh. Wait, I like your essay was so top notch. Like, so amazing. That, like, I was so happy because like I hadn't checked and I was like,
No, I was going to tell you, but I was like, I don't know, I just never got to it. Because I've seen you, but I was like, I'm gonna tell her in person. Like, one of these days, I'm going to see her between cell and just like other
this is
things.
such a
Like,
random place to
I know.
be.
I saw we had our like IE interview last night, and I saw you were in like the
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, also,
Right now I have to be somewhere 6 months before. Usually I last time I was. Yes, yeah. But wait, no, yeah, I'm down. I have to go to China, so it's like 526 West. You know where
I live at 26.
Oh, actually, is that where are you going home?
Did everyone grab attendance? Attendance? Okay, I'm taking it off.
Yeah. I like it. Sometimes I don't feel like my but like because I'm interested in like government, like you see like that section, so I'm just like, okay, this is really cool.
What's like general?
I don't feel like my 2-hour weekly sessions are useful. I'd rather like go until I just do it rather than like actually memorize it. Like I don't, and it's a lot of freshmen. I'm like, that's like, none of that's like, they're very like enriched. Like what I learned. And I feel bad because I feel like they probably think I'm.
Okay, no, but there's a big difference.
Yeah, no, there is. Some of them are like, it's larger than like. I don't think I was that was my freshman, but naturally I was going to freshman. So it's just like not. did my freshman year, probably would have.
All right. If you haven't got attendance, this is the last call. Last call for attendance.
I don't really know. I need to build out hard because it's time to weird and process every single time. Because you know, there's like you have different mentors and they all come around and tell you every time. It's trying to explain failure at everything. It's a waste of time. It's like I don't. With me is like. She's like, oh my god, seriously, yeah. So she's just like such a great resource. But she kind of gets what I'm talking about and like has like able to break through that barrier. So like when I talk to her before, she's an incredible resource. There's like some people like you probably met with that.
Oh wait, yes,
they've been like there's like people like that.
Yeah, jet skis. Yeah, 100%.
When's y'all like
Yeah. Like, we only have like 2 weeks on this session.
It worked.
Definitely not exactly.
It worked. No, it's what the trainings have done.
Well, it's just like a lecture. This is like started with no, you like do a good through like
that's how fast you have to
like some assignment because it's just past
it's like $1 billion shifts. Don't talk about it. And the question that the US is really
1 hour.
Scenario really expands
However, some of the things like I don't understand how much I understand. Like if it's like a biotech company or it's just like you can talk to them or yeah, especially like after it's like oh yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's so good. Yeah, there was a lot of people who spoke to this. Good job doing that.
There was so many
Are you gonna be back next week? You should. Oh my goodness. Lab for what?
For one of my recent classes, so I had to get that.
Are you gonna do 5 years here?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the class 26 so bad, but it's just like so much more appealing. I don't know, like,
Do you think so? And, like,
well, I've always
like
thought
even now, yeah, like, but it's also like all your friends are that, and like you've always had your mind on that, and then it just delayed, and you're like, oh, that just like doesn't like, I don't like the way that feels, you know?
Also, I live at 26 right now, and 26, it's like, it just like seems like
Are you gonna live there next year?
Going to 24 months.
Okay.
I was at 9 months.
No, real. I don't. It's so. I'm at 26 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which building are you in?
Okay, so you're right. You are like Did you live there last year? You were. I knew that. You were roommates. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, do you Savannah?
I haven't seen Savannah at all because I used to see her with tutoring all the time.
Oh,
however, yeah. However, like I feel like I'm so busy this year to the point where like I don't have time to see people. I didn't come like yeah. I like it. Last year I liked it a little bit more. However, like, I mean, yeah, I was really close to a lot of teachers and talking to the lab. The club's pretty small. It might not seem like it was in DC, but then there's like, it's really cool because there's like a very tight line. I never learned this. Like it was in DC this summer. It's like literally a bunch of 21-year-olds who like, then there's like a party house every day. And so it was super like, yeah, it's actually like so nice. Like all the guys there, like half of them were gay. It's like they like took me out for parties in DC this summer. And like would like invite me to parties and like different things. Like it was just like really affirming and like being able